Welcome to You, Me, Empathy. Thank you for listening. We would like to remind you that this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Known as just a silly boy with a feely heart. Please consider supporting the show. Check us out on Patreon or simply leave a review on iTunes. Here's your host and creator of the show, Known Wells.
Hello, feely humans. Welcome to another episode of You, Me, Empathy. My name is Known Wells, and I'm here today on episode 93 of the show with my guest, Branden Harvey. Branden and I talk about the importance of mentors, celebrating the stories of others, finding hope over cynicism, and why goodness matters. Branden is all about goodness. He has the Sounds Good podcast, a very popular podcast I love. He started the Good newspaper, celebrating goodness in the world, and he's part of Good, Good, Good. He's all about goodness, and he's a good dude that I really had a lot of fun chatting with, and I think you'll love it. Before we get to the episode, though, I just wanted to remind you that episode 100, the 100th episode party, celebrating 100 episodes, will be here next month. And by October 1st, if you want to participate, and anyone can, you just need to send me, you need to email me, youmeempathy@gmail.com. You need to email me 5 minutes of audio or less, no more than 5 minutes, a personal experience that you've had with empathy, vulnerability, or emotional exploration, a seminal moment, a memorable moment, an integral moment in your mental health related to empathy, vulnerability, and or emotional exploration. So record that, record in a quiet place if you can. Send me the MP3 audio file at youmeempathy@gmail.com with the subject line 100th episode celebration. And again, I need your audio by October 1st. Please do that. I've only received one so far from dear Francesca. And so be more like Francesca, you guys. Send me your stories. I want to celebrate you on this episode. So please do that. Okay. Another thing I wanted to mention is we've got a new Apple Podcast review from Vania Lynn, VANIALYNN. Vania says, the subject line is all the feels, quote, a safe space for feely humans feeling big feely things. Thank you for giving me something to center myself in between therapy. It reminds me that we are never alone on this pale blue dot, end quote. Thank you, Vania. I really appreciate that. That's really what this show's about. It's reminding us that we're not alone, because we're not. There's so much in us that we can connect to and relate to, and that's the beauty of being human and being a feely human. So thank you, Vania, for that review. You guys, if you want to leave a review for You, Me, Empathy, go to Apple Podcasts, 5 stars, write your feely heart out, and I will read it on my intros for the You, Me, Empathy podcast episode. So thank you. Please do that. Okay, should we get to the episode? Oh, make sure to follow You, Me, Empathy on Instagram, Twitter, You, Me, Empathy. We've got a private Facebook group. That's at facebook.com/groups/You, Me, Empathy. And let's do it. Let's get to the episode now with my sweet, good friend, Branden Harvey, on why goodness matters.
You and me, empathy, la 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 la. You, me, empathy, yeah, la la la.
Welcome to You, Me, Empathy, a podcast about exploring the struggles we face in our day-to-day lives as humans trying to get by on this wondrous and overwhelming pale blue dot. The intent of You, Me, Empathy is to talk openly, without judgment, about our mental health, our neuroses, our shared anxieties and worries, to create a dialogue that is vulnerable and deeply human and empathetic, and to share that dialogue with others to inspire emotional and cognitive collaboration and insight so we can, hand in hand, break down the stigma that make us feel shame and guilt for struggling, for feeling our feelings, for being feely humans. You, Me, Empathy is a safe, friendly space designed to inspire the beauty in each of us. Today, I'm feeling good to gab with unabashedly optimistic storyteller, cynicism defeater, passionate advocate and curator of the good in the world, and Sounds Good podcast creator, Branden Harvey. Hello, Branden.
Oh my goodness, I am so honored to be here, and what a kind intro. Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, I'm so honored to have you, friend. My sort of nerd brain was tickled by the idea of having good to gab. It was a lovely alliteration moment.
That's perfect. Oh my goodness, you nailed it.
Well, thank you for being here on You, Me, Empathy. I'm a big fan of yours and the work that you're doing in the world, and we'll get into all of that. But before we do, we always kick off the show with just an emotional check-in. How are you feeling?
I'm doing great today, actually, in anticipation for this conversation, because I guess I'll back up and say I know that sometimes my brain just feels so busy and cluttered, and then I'll do something like this that I care about, and I won't be able to be fully present. And so, in anticipation that could happen today, I woke up and I went on a run, and I meditated, and I ate a delightful breakfast. And because of it, I'm feeling great. And I'm like, why don't I just do this every day and show up for life like this every day? So today is an especially good day.
Oh, that's so good to hear. I love those days. Are you a runner? Is that something you'd call yourself?
I wouldn't call myself that, but it is something that I do. And I feel like I'm recently getting back into it. And it's not for my physical health as much as it's for my mental health. It's become one of the most helpful things I've done for my brain.
Yeah, I relate to that deeply. I consider myself a runner, and I've been a runner for a while, and I've recently had to make some adjustments. Like I was always a longer distance runner, and I did sort of long trail runs, 15 miles, 20-mile runs.
Wow.
And I've had to start to scale back because it was messing up with my body. I was having pain, and it's been a good sort of challenge to listen to my body, because I'm like you, Branden. I get so much mental benefit out of running, and so I still want to continue running, but I just need to do it on a level that's not as intense,
One of my favorite tools that I found recently has been, the app Headspace. It's a meditation app.
Yeah.
So they did a partnership with Nike, and it's essentially Nike's main running coach and Andy Puttingcombe from Headspace, and they'll basically walk you through a run. And so I'll do a run, and they're in my head, essentially giving me meditation and coaching at the same time. And it's great because their goal is not for you to run a half marathon or anything. Their goal is for you to go out and do something good for your mind, using your body. And so that's been really helpful for me to be I don't have to accomplish a bunch. I don't have to run a long time if I'm really present with the short amount that I do run.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's such a beautiful act. I think we, as humans, tend to get caught up in the numbers, get caught up in the sort of end goals or the achievements. But if we can kind of be with our noggins and just kind of be in the moment, I mean, it's easier said than done, but when we can get there, it's a beautiful moment.
Yeah, that's definitely what I'm seeking in a lot of aspects of my life right now.
Nice. Well, thank you for showing up and being present.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's an honor to get to be present for this.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to share for you, Branden, and the listeners. Today, so this is sort of my emotional check-in. Today, I was featured on this beautiful suicide awareness project called Faces of Fortitude by my friend Mary Angela Abeo. And I've got, so she posted like a picture. It's a black and white photography project aimed around creating awareness for suicide and really cross-narrative suicide awareness. So people who've had ideation, people who've attempted suicide, and people who've been impacted by people who have died by suicide. It's very beautiful, and I was featured today as of this recording, and just have gotten a ton of wonderful, supportive and loving and empathetic responses, and I'm feeling very loved in the moment.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's so good to hear. Yeah. And congratulations, and I'm excited for that to move the needle for some people and to be a helpful resource and story.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, let's jump into your story, Branden. Your world is goodness. There's so much goodness and storytelling, and I'm eager to sort of delve into it. But I always kind of kick off this part of the chat by asking my guests, can you give me maybe a seminal moment or two, moments of your life that really kind of stick out as being memorable, that it could be from your childhood, could be from your adulthood, doesn't matter. Just moments that really kind of speak to who you are today, something that really kind of sticks out as memorable. Doesn't necessarily have to be about mental health, but it could be. That's up to you. Just kind of seminal, memorable moments.
Interesting question. I feel like it's so hard to kind of process that, but I mean, I think one thing that I think about is I remember when I was in middle school, and I was always kind of like the class clown, the person who would yell jokes when I shouldn't
Sure.
be, and was definitely a distraction for all of my teachers just trying to do their job, and for all the students who are trying to learn. And I remember getting in trouble once from Mrs. Walker. And Mrs. Walker she also just kind of on the side for fun liked to draw and illustrate cartoons. And so I get in trouble that day. And the next day I come into school and she illustrated a little comic of me that was essentially telling me like, hey, you're a lot of fun, but you have to learn like when to keep your mouth shut. and I love that because it was actually, she was right. And it was actually communicated in such a thoughtful, dare I say, empathetic way that kind of affirmed what I was doing, who I maybe am innately, but spoke to this shift I could make that actually like would allow me to be a better human and probably be more helpful. And I don't know. I think that was one of the first times I remember receiving constructive criticism and being like, oh, like this can make me a better person, and just like having the ears to hear. Yeah. And I don't know why I thought of that today, and I don't even actually know if that's I don't think that set off like a chain reaction that led to what I do today. But I am grateful for that. And I just remember that being a moment of personal learning, and making me want to grow as a human being in a time where probably I wasn't very self-aware yet.
I really like that moment. I think it's a beautiful moment because she saw you. She kind of, it's almost like she saw the type of person you are, and she was using maybe some of the language you would use to kind of meet you halfway in a way, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And there's so much like in, I struggle with constructive criticism sometimes, and there's a fine line between just kind of doing it bluntly and doing it thoughtfully and thinking about the person and how this particular person would react to a certain comment or piece of criticism. And I think, I think that's like a great lesson in like how we interact with each other, because just the words we use could be the difference between you being inspired to kind of look at that and be like, oh, this was interesting. Like maybe I need to think about this differently, versus you shutting down or
Exactly.
or just, blowing your top and just being, twice the class clown you were,
Yeah, no, exactly. I think, and I would imagine plenty of other teachers before that and maybe even after that, and probably just humans in general, have tried to give me that constructive criticism in a way that didn't speak to me, and I probably didn't respond to it. So it's interesting to think about how I can do that as well. And, it's tricky because not everybody's the same, too. So it's not like you can just come up with a creative way of communicating and then that's going to work on everybody.
Right.
You've got to create unique tools for unique people, and it requires being fully present to who that person is and what their needs are.
Yeah, you have to listen.
Yeah.
A big part of empathy and just connecting as humans is listening and really having the ability to let go of any ego and just kind of meet people where they are. Yeah. Were you like that at home too? Were you kind of like class clown growing up in the household?
I mean, I think to some degree, yeah. I think I've always just been like bold, not super quiet. When I have opinions, I share them. But there's less competition at home, so
Sure.
There's less need to rise above a roar. And so, yeah, but I think I was a pretty consistent human across the board.
Yeah. Do you have siblings?
I've got 3 younger siblings.
Okay, so you're the oldest.
Yes.
All right. I'm the second oldest, firstborn
it.
son, and then I have 2 younger brothers, older sister.
Got it. Okay.
What was your home life like?
It felt pretty. Just great. Like I had a great childhood, amazing family. It's nice being back in Oregon. They live here in Oregon, so I get to see a lot of them more. I just feel like we were a tight unit. I grew up in a small town where you could just like walk anywhere. And I remember my sister and I just walking across town on the weekends just for fun. You'd stop into a coffee shop for a bit. You keep on walking. It probably didn't even take more than an hour to walk that far. And it was, I feel like I had a wonderful childhood and I loved it.
That's good to hear. Do you have it like looking back at yourself as being this, class clown type at school and being kind of loud and boisterous and that way? Do you, looking back, how old are you now?
26.
26. So you're an adult now. Looking back at this kid you were, like, do you still see a lot of yourself in that person? Has that been sort of consistent for you?
Yeah, I think so. I think some of the biggest things was I had great mentors growing up, great people who kind of invested in me, poured into me, reminded me who I am, saw who I was, and then reminded me who I was. I feel like those mentors laid the groundwork for all of the work I do today in a really unique way. I think that until you grow in self-awareness, you really don't have a clue who you are. You just kind of listen to what other people tell you are.
Totally.
And if you've got great trusted people, then you're golden. That's awesome, because then you're off to a head start before you're even kind of in a spot of self-awareness. And so I feel very grateful that I had people who kind of saw my leadership qualities and encouraged those things, and saw my optimism and encouraged those things, or my sense of justice and encouraged those things. And even taught me, hey, here's how to take that sense of justice and do something unique with it. Here's how to take your time and talents and abilities, your interests, your passions, and pour that into something that makes a difference for somebody or for groups of people. And so I feel very grateful that I kind of learned those skills so early, and even was given some leadership opportunities to bring others along for those experiences to also kind of learn as I was learning. And I think that I'm so grateful for that. And I think it really is a part of the work I do in 2019.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I think it is a rare thing, because the people I speak to, and certainly in my case, certainly didn't feel like I had any support in the self-awareness sort of seeking journey that I needed to do, Can you give me some specific examples of were these parents, teachers, and what kind of, can you give me a specific example of what they did kind of early on to help you?
Yeah. Well, so I think most about Karin. So Karin was probably 6 to 8 years older than me, maybe. She had gone to the same high school as me. She lived in my small hometown. And I remember finding her on MySpace and just thinking she was so cool because she was a photographer, a professional photographer, shooting cool MySpace photos for bands and stuff. And when I was in high school, I took a photography class, and as a part of it, I got to use a camera for a year. I got to basically keep it, take it home, and so I very quickly fell in love with photography. Started finding people online that I admired, and started working to learn from them and emulate their photos and become better by practicing. And Karin was one of those people, but unlike all the other people I followed, she was actually in my town. And she very generously started kind of investing in me, giving me opportunities to shadow her for photo shoots, and she would actually pay me for those things, and
wow.
Giving me all kinds of experiences and opportunities, and trying new things with lights and different cameras and different lenses, and going on adventures and shooting photos of abandoned houses or bands or parties or events or anything like that. But most of all, in addition to the technical stuff and the business stuff and the client relations stuff, she taught me how to use my photography to make a difference. And I remember her having a friend who was a single mother, had a super cute son who was probably 8 at the time, and she just knew, hey, this mom would never prioritize paying for photography for family photos, but she deserves to know how beautiful she is and how beautiful her family is, and how wonderful would it be to gift her a photo shoot that's worth a significant amount of money. And so she brought me along on that, and we both got to photograph this amazing single mother and her kid and create these just beautiful, wonderful photos. And it was that moment where I was like, oh, it's interesting to think about how easy it is to use this unique skill that I have that, the person to my right and the person to my left doesn't have, in a way that helps somebody, in a way that is unique to them. And that, I think, really got my gears turning, not just saying, oh, I should do this a lot, which I did start doing that a lot. But, as I gained new skills or passions or things that got me excited, how could I use those things as well to move the needle? And I think in many ways, she kind of built that trajectory for me saying, okay, who else is doing this? Who else is using their passions, talents, abilities, things that get them excited to move the needle for good in the world? And so those have also always been my heroes. Yeah. And those were, when I first launched my podcast, those were the people that I had conversations with, because I just wanted to learn from them and about them and how and why they did what they did.
That's so cool. What an amazing. I mean, that experience must have been so transformative for you.
Yeah, I mean, truly, it would have been so easy for her to just say, "Hey, here's aperture, here's shutter speed, here's what the lens letters and numbers
go
mean,
off on
and
your
just
own or
leave
whatever."
it there." But she took it so much deeper, and I that's not an easy thing to do either, like to lug along like some 16-year-old punk, but I'm forever grateful. And I just she lives in San Diego now, and I just got to hang out with her and her husband there. And so it's really fun to get to, still keep in touch with people like that who, made such a difference in my life.
That's so, I mean, that warms my heart and fills it up, because there's two things I want to highlight here. The first being her, doing that for you. I think that speaks to the care that she has, the impact that she wants to make, and just kind of like guiding the next generation in giving back and goodness. And I think that's a huge gift, and not many of us do that for each other. And I think we need to. The second thing is that you were like, this was like the experience where, and you said it yourself, but I just want to repeat it because it's such an important thing. You started to connect the dots of like, oh, I have this like unique ability. I can use that for good. And I think that's a beautiful lesson for all of us, is that like each of us have unique capacities for creation, for artistic endeavor, for what have you. And we can use it all for good. Our experiences, like the great lesson in this podcast is that our traumas or our struggles, or these are experiences that can, if we sort of look at it in the right way and process it the right way, can be transformative for others. Like if we tell our stories to allow them to feel less alone or find insight into our own stories, So I just think that's such a beautiful moment you had.
Thank you. And that's really well said.
Oh, thanks. So you at 16 you were doing this photography work, and then what kind of things were you starting to do right after that?
So I kind of went down that trajectory for a while, and I really wanted to be a professional photographer when I grew up, and I started making money while I was in high school doing that, which was pretty wild. I don't think that that was evidence of me being a great photographer. I think it was evidence of me being in a very small town, but I'm very grateful that because I was in a small town, I was given paid work opportunities. And I think in a lot of ways that kind of built my confidence and helped me see myself as an entrepreneur and a business owner. But I went off to college, and, my parents were like, all right, well, have fun at school. Make sure you focus on school and not photography. And I was like, okay. And I genuinely meant it. And then I show up in Portland, Oregon, which is the exact opposite city of my small hometown, in a wonderful way. Like it was just filled with people who were so different than people I'd experienced, and life experiences that were so wild and vast and varied. And I was confronted with a lot of things that I had never experienced before, including a lot of injustice and a lot of heartbreaking things, because to some degree I kind of grew up in a sheltered community. And I get there and I'm like, well, I guess I've got this photography skill. I should just like start volunteering with some nonprofits and start kind of sharing my photo abilities with people who are making a difference in these problems I'm seeing. I'll just do that a little bit on the side. And so I start doing that, and eventually it turns out that like I'm doing that all the time, and I'm still going to college. And, there are even times where I go to Africa for 2 weeks during the school year, and I like talk to my professors and say, hey, I'm going to be in Zimbabwe for the next 4 classes.
It's bold of you.
I can do stuff on the online. I'm at that point, I'm like 19. And it's so funny just like fully owning this thing where I'm like, yeah, like I'm going to keep on going to school, but I'm also going to be like just I'm going to just like leave and go to Zimbabwe in the middle of school. And it worked. Like it was fine. I completed all my classes, and I took 1 or 2 quarters off just to because I had a gig in Southeast Asia where I was going to be gone for like 4 weeks, and they were like, that's probably a little too much. but besides that, you know, I was able to just kind of go through the full thing. And so it was interesting though, being in Portland, and building out this thing and following this passion and working with a lot of organizations and social impact brands. And that was around the time when kind of Instagram came along, and I started sharing a lot of these photos on Instagram and started taking a pretty unique approach to Instagram, really focusing on storytelling and sharing these unique experiences around the world, and also the unique experiences of the people I was meeting in Portland, whether they were homeless people or creative people, but regardless, people who had different life experiences than me, whose stories I found interesting. And I would ask permission, hey, can I shoot a portrait of you and share a bit of your story online? And I started doing that. And it was really fun to see people kind of responding to this, because I think at the time it was a little bit unique to share on Instagram a lot of photos of people instead of like pictures of your coffee and pictures of sunsets. Yeah. And so, and I love pictures of coffee and sunsets, but this unique thing was getting some kind of attention, and I was like, oh, maybe I can lean further into this. And that's when I kind of realized, like, maybe more than just being a photographer, I am a storyteller. Like, I can tell stories, and maybe I don't even have to hold myself to just this one medium. Maybe there's other ways for me to communicate these things. And so that's when I started to really explore myself as a writer, myself as a filmmaker. That one kind of busted and flopped. It just kind of, it was funny, like leaning into that, being like, what if I'm a filmmaker? And then trying it a few times and being like, that's really hard. I don't like that. And then trying other things. And now, you know, I'm only partially a photographer, but I've got all these other mediums for telling stories. And so that was kind of around the same time where I was just becoming more self-aware and realizing that my identity could be more than just photography.
It's really neat. What were some of I mean, when you were posting those photos early on, and those sort of storytelling photos of people early on your Instagram, what were you hoping to convey as a message?
I think it was curiosity. I think that it was me thinking about how just a little bit of curiosity led to me having this amazing conversation that was so interesting and so fascinating and inspiring. And I thought, hey, if more people can have some curiosity about the people around them, if they can ask some deeper questions or talk to people that they would have never talked to, then they'll get this amazing opportunity that I'm experiencing for the first time. And I think that I found a community of people who had probably discovered that long before me and were passionate about that. And then a group of people who were ready to jump on that journey as well. And I actually started a hashtag back in the day, back when like there were hashtags that people weren't using yet. And it was just hashtag story portrait, you know, share a story, share a portrait. You've got story portrait. And I remember realizing that I had kind of stumbled across something that wasn't just for me. It was a universal thing that a lot of people cared about when I checked the hashtag one day, and it wasn't just my photos on there. There were other people who were interested in this and trying this out. And that was a really cool thing to think, oh, I get to move the needle on this in a way that I guess I didn't know that I could.
And when you're on these sort of international sort of adventures, what in these beautiful sort of impactful conversations you're having with, you know, people from all over the world, what are you learning about yourself during this process? Because you're still pretty young at this point, right?
Yeah. I most of this was happening when I was, still in my teens and early 20s. I think one of the biggest things was learning that when I step outside myself and show a sense of curiosity, but mostly a sense of empathy and almost even more importantly, like showing people that I'm present, that amazing things happen. And that, that's such a hard thing. And sometimes I feel like I've gotten away from that, and I've got seasons where I'm better at that than others. But it's always so great, like when I sit down somewhere with my headphones off and I just like look around the room and realize that there are so many people around me with different stories, and I can strike up a conversation and learn so much, but also hopefully make somebody's day a little bit better, and subsequently make myself feel a little bit better. So I think that was one of the biggest things. I think that the other thing was I was really drawn to people who were experiencing life circumstances where I wouldn't blame them for being cynical or apathetic or hopeless or angry, but they were choosing a sense of hopefulness, and not just a sense of hopefulness, but a desire to make a difference. And I think that was, I think I was always inspired by that, even stateside when I first moved to Portland. But I think it was especially profound, talking to people, when I'm on the ground in Uganda, or I'm on the ground in the Philippines, and I'm talking to people who, they've had a lot of crap thrown at them. They've experienced more injustice than I can even imagine, and they somehow are maintaining a sense of hope. And then, despite a lack of traditional resources, despite a lack of public influence in the way that I might have, or anybody in the United States might have, they are dedicated to making the lives of other people better, even though, they could fully just be a recipient of aid. Like nobody would fault them for when life deals you those blows to just try to lick your wounds and to take care of yourself, but instead they were choosing to take care of others. And that blew my mind. And so that, I think, set me off on this really deep curiosity on how in the world do you do that? Because I'm not somebody who's experienced a great deal of injustice in the world. I'm not even necessarily somebody who's experienced a lot of personal pain in my own life, to some degree, but compared to many others, not at all. And I even have hard time. I honestly sometimes have a really hard time with maintaining a sense of hope or optimism, and not falling into that trap of cynicism and apathy. And so to learn from people who are trying to figure that out, or who have potentially figured that out, is one of the most fascinating questions I've kind of been asking myself for years.
Yeah, it is pretty remarkable. I think it's interesting. You said you haven't had a ton of personal loss or struggle or injustice, and I would classify myself in that as well. Even though I've had some childhood trauma and abuses and things like that, I still feel, in the grand scheme of things, like I am a white male living in California. I feel very lucky for the place I'm in. And I think I bring that up because to empathize with you, Branden, because I think that we, despite all of that, we can still do good work, and we can still foster that curiosity, and we can still give back and focus on the good. And it doesn't mean we can't I mean, we can't fully empathize with some of the people you're referring to, but we can certainly make a difference. We can certainly show up and lead with our hearts and see how that connection goes and connect with others. Because, like, I think sometimes we as humans get caught up in the I don't, I haven't struggled enough. Like, I'm not mentally ill enough, or I'm not this thing enough. And it keeps us from making the choices to make that impact,
Yeah. And I think that's something that I've kind of asked myself a lot, because I do want to be sensitive to, the reality that I don't understand these things as much as others do. But I think that when you have a genuine sense of curiosity, you can continue to try to experience, or not try to experience, but try to understand and try to seek that. And you're right. I think almost people who experience more privilege and fewer injustices and heartbreak and pain almost have the responsibility to do something about those injustices, because I don't think it's fair for just the people who are experiencing those injustices, especially if they're actively experiencing them, to be expected to be the ones to change things.
Yeah.
I'm living in a great deal of privilege, and so I think it's my responsibility to step in and say, okay, I'm going to fight this.
Yeah.
Even though I can't imagine what the pain you're going through is, even though I haven't experienced that head on myself, I see a way that I can uniquely do something, and I want to do that alongside you.
Yeah, 100%. I have a question for you. What is in your mind? What is good? What is goodness? What does goodness mean to you?
I think that I wholeheartedly believe that the world is becoming a better place year after year. I wholeheartedly believe that if you were to be born, if you had the choice of when in the world, in the course of history, you could be born without knowing your race, your nationality, your gender, your sex, your orientation, all these things, you would hands down choose 2019, because across the most pieces of data, it is the best time to be alive. And of course, there are so many problems and injustices, and many things are, worse this year than they were last year. But if you zoom out and look at the grand history of the world, we're significantly better than any previous decade.
Right.
And I think that good is things that take us. Good is things that take us a step closer to this better and more perfect world. And sometimes those are small changes, and sometimes those are huge, massive things. But that's when I talk about celebrating the good in the world and becoming the good in the world. That's what I'm talking about. It's okay. How can we be a part of this beautiful trend of goodness? Because I don't want to look back at the data and see that there was this amazing swelling of good that happened in one area and not be able to know that I was a part of that, and to think that maybe it could have been even better for more people had I moved the needle, if I had stepped up. So good is any contribution towards this slow and steady march towards a greater amount of equality and justice and hope in the world.
Is good to you? I mean, so I would sort of glean from that good is, this is an objective good we're talking about, a universal good.
Yeah, and I mean that's where things get tricky, where a lot of good is pretty subjective. But I would say, I think good can be subjective short term. I think long term, it becomes objective. So one of the first stories that we ever told when we kind of created this company focused on the good in the world, good, was the fact that self-driving cars are coming quicker than ever. They're becoming more efficient and cheaper. And, there was some estimated year in the very near future where self-driving cars are going to be the majority. And I hands down see this as good news because it's going to reduce carbon emissions, which is going to be better for people across the globe. It's going to cut down on congestion. It's going to create more spaces in public areas because we're not going to have parking lots anymore, so that there's going to be more potentially social interaction and more green space, and so many reasons why this is good. Fewer car accidents.
Less traffic.
Less traffic, exactly. All these things, more efficiently getting places so you can spend more time with the people you love instead of commuting. All these things. But at the same time, the reality is that the number one job for men in America is driving. So whether you're a taxi driver, an Uber driver, or you're delivering things, you're a truck driver, anything like that, driving is the number one occupation for men in America. And you think about how self-driving cars are essentially going to put a very large number of people out of a job. And that's heartbreaking. Like you can't pretend like that's not going to affect people and their families in a huge way. Like that's going to be a really hard thing. And so there's some nuance to this in the short term. But in the long term, all of those people are going to live healthier, happier lives on a planet that is thriving because of this. But in the short term, hands down, that's a difficult pill to swallow. And so then you are confronted with another injustice of you have all these people who don't have a job. And I think that everybody deserves the right to do something that makes them come alive and helps them contribute to society and gives them the ability to live the life that they want to live with the people that they want to live with. And so then, okay, cool. How do we solve that problem? How do we provide, people with this particular skill set, a new job that is in line with their values and passions and abilities? And, it's almost, for me, it honestly becomes exciting to think about, because it's like, okay, cool, another problem to solve. Well, we've solved the last one. Let's solve this next one. And so, I guess that's an example of how the short term good is subjective, fairly so. But in the long term, I believe that objectively, on every metric, I think will just continue to become better if we continue to work at it.
Yeah. Would you say that this sort of pursuit of goodness is really more broadly speaking a philosophy we need to live as humans, as opposed to a vocation that we exist in?
Yes. I think I don't think everybody has to be working for a nonprofit. Not everybody has to do what I do for their work. I think that we all need to find something to do that. I think that all of us see an injustice in the world that breaks our hearts.
Yeah.
And especially, I think we all have something that breaks our hearts in a way that's unique. I don't think everybody's heart is going to break by the same things, though there are some things that break everybody's heart. And the trick is to figure out what you can do about that so it doesn't break your heart anymore. This is a quote from the founder of Patagonia, who I just saw speak last week. And he said, "The cure for depression is action." And I love that idea. And it also reminds me of this other quote from Eric Liu, who is this guy who is deeply focused on getting people more involved in civics and kind of public life and our shared life together. And he said, to be optimistic is to assume that things will work out, but to be hopeful is to realize that things can work out if you work at them. Hope requires responsibility and agency. Optimism relieves us of both. He said, in rooting for your favorite sports team, choose optimism. In rooting for democracy, choose hope. And I love this idea because to be hopeful, it's required that you show up with a sense of responsibility and agency. And I think we all want to feel hopeful. And it's okay to feel optimistic, when you're going to, a sporting event and you're like, oh, I hope we win. But you don't have any ability to do anything about that.
Right.
But when we choose a sense of hopefulness, we do.
That action component.
Yep,
Yeah,
exactly.
That's really interesting. I like that a lot. Recently, as of this recording, and I saw you tweet about this a little bit, some awfulness happened in the world over in Paris at the Notre Dame Cathedral. Just devastating stuff. I think, I guess I'm getting at is when we as humans see this type of thing, tragedies, bombings, these sorts of things we see, like how do we continue to remain hopeful and not sort of beaten down? And because like you said, we all have our ups and downs. We are human. How do we, if we are feeling cynical or beaten down by these sort of tragic events that are, we feel maybe are out of our control, how do we bounce back from that?
Well, I would say the first thing is, if you feel heartbroken by something that happens in the world, whether it's a building burning down or a shooting or a particular political policy that is affecting human beings in a very real and heartbreaking way, if you feel heartbroken by those things, then you're in a great spot and you're not alone. I think that if you didn't feel heartbreak by those things, if you have become numb, that's a greater problem. And I also wouldn't fault anybody for that, because I think it would be easy to feel numb. But if your heart is still breaking by those things, you're in a great place, because it means that your heart is open. And that's how I want to live my whole life. And in fact, for years, I think I lived in that zone of optimism, thinking that it was a sense of hope. And then I discovered what real hope is like. And Brene Brown has this quote where she says, "You can't selectively numb emotion." And I was realizing that I was trying my best to not experience pain, but at the same time, in my pursuit of doing that, I wasn't experiencing great joy or happiness. And when I started to allow myself to really feel overwhelmed by the tragedies in my own life and in the lives of others, that was when I felt like I had become a more full human being. And so the best thing is to start with heartbreak. And if I'm ever reporting on a story and trying to talk about how there's good coming out of it, but it hasn't broken my heart yet, I pass the story off to somebody else, because if I can't experience the heartbreak, I don't think I deserve to be the one to share the good. But fortunately, I genuinely do believe that there is good in the midst of heartbreak every single time, even when it's hard to see. There's this quote from one of my heroes, Fred Rogers, where he says, "When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, 'Look for the helpers. You'll always find people who are helping.'" And at first I was like, yeah, that's a great sentiment. Always, like, will you always find people who are helping? And kind of inspired by that quote, about 4 years ago, I started an email newsletter, and it started with just a tweet where I was like, hey, I'm curious to see how much good there is out in the world. If you want to join me in this, I'm gonna just like start sending out emails every week, talking about what I'm seeing in the world that's good. Sign up if you want to. And a few people signed up, and I signed up for a free MailChimp account. Started sending out these emails every week on Tuesdays, and I genuinely, I had like a list of like, oh, here's all the good things I've already seen, and over the first month, I basically started sharing those things, and then got to the end of that month, and I was like, oh crap, am I going to run out? And I just started paying more attention and realized like, no, there's so much good in the world, and so it's interesting because I always just write down every single piece of good news that I see around the world. When I see it on the streets, I write it down. When I see it online, I write it down. And it's the weeks with the greatest amount of heartbreak and pain and injustice that my list is actually the longest. And it's wild, and it feels kind of woo-woo, and I don't know if I believe that there's like a cosmic situation that makes that happen, but you know, it does happen.
Yeah.
and so that's been a really interesting thing to see. And, because there's a few different kinds of good news. There's the macro good news, just the idea of, the fact that, global poverty just continues to decline year after year, or the fact that child mortality is declining in poor countries year after year. Those are the big things. But then there's also the small things, like the stories of people who rush into unsafe situations, shootings or terrorist attacks, to go and save people and serve people, knowing that they could die in the process. Or you know, people who see something heartbreaking happening in their neighborhood and they say, you know what, I'm gonna do something about this. I could just go about my life and nobody would fault me, but I'm gonna choose to spend my time and energy investing in this thing. And I love both ends of that spectrum, but I believe that those things are always there. They're always present.
Yeah. No, I agree. And by the way, huge Fred Rogers fan myself.
Yes.
Did you see?
So
did you
good.
see Won't You Be My Neighbor?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it was so beautiful, and I don't think a single person walked out of that theater with a dry eye.
Oh my gosh, I was weeping. I was weeping like 3 minutes in.
Yeah, I need to watch it again. It was amazing. I loved it so much.
Yeah, he is a true sort of hero of mine, and you know, really seeing the good in people, really focusing on the good in life, and I love that quote. Look for the helpers. It's something I think about every time something happens. And by the way, serendipitously, I did just yesterday sign up for the Good newsletter, and I got in my email inbox today, I got some good news, even surrounding the whole Notre Dame Cathedral news. So there you go. It worked.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing that. And, you know, it's so funny because I woke up, you know, I scheduled that to go out early this morning. And I wake up and I come downstairs and my wife is reading the news, and there's even more good news around that only got reported today, that didn't even make it in there. And so I love that, you know, even though my job is to find the good and to share that with others, there's more to be found beyond that. And so there's no shortage.
Yeah. I love that. I really love everything that you stand for and are doing. And I'd love to, you know, have the listeners get a sense of like what it is exactly. So you have good. You have the Good newspaper. By the way, before, I guess this was last year, maybe springtime in Chicago, I picked up, and I Instagrammed this, I picked up a copy of the Good newspaper at Sip of Hope in Chicago.
I love Sip of Hope.
I love Sip of Hope. Beautiful organization. And this was what got me sort of interested in your world. I was like, this is amazing.
Wow.
I said, I love this idea so much. It's easy to find ourselves on paths of negativity, of frustration, of hopelessness because of all the quote shitty news. I want to make an impact and yet feel overwhelmed and lost often. It helps to take a moment and remember the joy, the brights, the positive us feely humans are capable of, and then we get back to the good fight. So yeah, I was just like, wow, this is amazing, and I just wanted to make sure you are aware that I saw this thing out in the world.
That makes me so happy, and I'm so honored. And Sip of Hope is just such an amazing coffee shop doing good in regards to people's battles with mental health.
Yep.
And I'm so proud that they have the Good Newspaper there. I don't know if they always have it there. I don't know if they have it there right now, but I'm so glad that you found it there.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was like
they're
what
so
I
in line
needed
with our mission. That's so perfect. I mean, to kind of take your question, with my background in humanitarian photography, my passion for storytelling, I would come home from these trips. I'd come back from Uganda, and I'd be telling these stories of organizations who are doing really impactful work, like just this game-changing work, creating solutions to some of the biggest injustices. And I would tell these stories, and I'd give them back to the nonprofits, and they would raise a bunch of money from their donors because of them, and it would allow them to keep on doing the work that they were doing, and I was so proud of it. But the hard thing was a lot of those stories were just going straight back to the nonprofit and the people who already knew about those solutions. And that's great and all, but I would come back and I would talk to friends who would be like, hey man, you just came back from Africa. What's the deal with the AIDS crisis? Like, was that heartbreaking? What about Joseph Kony and the LRA? Was that just heartbreaking to see? What about child mortality or the lack of opportunities with jobs? Just people feeling like everything was heartbreaking. And of course, there's so much heartbreak. But I was literally just there telling stories of people creating solutions to each of those problems. And I was realizing that those stories were not reaching a bunch of people, and a bunch of people felt very hopeless about what was going on in the world. And I was like, well, if that's true for my friends who I should be telling about these things, then it's got to be true for more people. And I also thought about, all the injustices that I was seeing in the world, whether it was, police brutality or the growing refugee crisis or just division in politics, and just wondering, is anybody doing anything about these? Is anybody working to create a solution? And so I set out to communicate the stories that I was finding in more ways. And so it really did start with that Instagram push of being like, all right, well, let's tell these stories on social media and see what happens. And people responded. And so I'm like, okay, let's take this a level deeper. And so started a podcast where we could have a little bit more of an intimate, longer conversation, and people could listen in to these same conversations I was having. And I was like, this is amazing. This is great. And then we start the newsletter to say, here's what's going on in the world every day. And then we're like, okay, how can we take this even further and get people's attention? And I thought a lot about this quote from Seth Godin, where he talks about how you have to be remarkable. You've got to be worthy of remark. Otherwise, you're average, and average is useless. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's a very blunt point, Seth Godin. And what if, how can I make sure that I don't just, get buried in the internet, among all kinds of other people doing all kinds of things? I was like, well, you know what nobody's doing right now? Making a newspaper, largely because they were dying and it was expensive, but nobody was doing it. And I was like, that's an interesting way to be remarkable. Because when you want to make a difference in the world, when you want to move the needle, you really do have to be remarkable, because it's hard to stand out. It's hard to have people see what you're doing. But if it matters, it's important that you make sure people see it.
Yeah.
And so we're like, okay, well, let's kind of jumping ahead. We're basically like, let's start a newspaper filled with good news. And we launched this thing on Kickstarter, and we're super nervous up until we launch it. And I'm filled with a lot of anxiety and dread for weeks. And I'm at some point just thinking, maybe I should just cancel this. Like, I'll just like recoup the lost costs and just will quit it. I don't want to be embarrassed. But effectively, my wife and my team talked me into pressing the launch button on our Kickstarter, and we sit very nervously for a few minutes, and then within 52 hours, we were fully funded.
Wow, that's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a wild roller coaster, and it was fascinating because I genuinely didn't know if anybody else needed this, but I felt like I needed this. So I thought that I should bring it to the world because I'd never like to think I'm an anomaly. I'd never like to think that I'm the only one who feels something. Right. And I was so grateful that we found other people who felt the same thing. They felt apathy and cynicism starting to sink in a little bit, and they didn't want that. They didn't want to become useless. They wanted to, as Dr. Maya Angelou says, pick up the battle and make it better just where they are. And so we had a successful campaign, and then we had to figure out how to make a newspaper. And let me tell you, I talked with more people over the age of 60 in my life than I'd ever talked to in my life. And so it was because there's nobody's making like a YouTube or a Skillshare tutorial on like how to make a newspaper, because that's a dying industry. So I just like had a lot of long phone calls with people who had old people voices.
And they're smoking cigars, and
exactly. Yeah. Literally the guy who almost was like my mentor and kind of taught me a lot about the process in our first year, he just retired. And so if I had started this a year later, like, I don't know who I would have gone to learn from. And so it's interesting getting into the industry at this time, but it's funny because it works. You know, it's a beautifully designed newspaper. Our designer and our art director are just like so talented, and they make this thing beautiful. So you want to kind of pick it up if it's sitting in a coffee shop, or if it's sitting in a hospital, or on your friend's coffee table. And then once you open it up, it's just filled with so many stories of people doing good in the world. But my favorite part is that at the bottom of every page is something called the Good Bar. And it's action steps on how you can get involved with what you just read, because it sometimes is, it feels really daunting to start, especially if you're talking about millions of people around the world who are fleeing war and terror, in the refugee crisis, who just want a safe place. And you're like, I don't know what to do to do something. And so we just make it really easy. We're like, well, here's a good thing you can do. Here's a better thing you can do. And here's the best thing you can do. And usually that's, I guess in this situation, the example would be for good. We'd say, hey, there's a lot of stigma around refugees right now. So why don't you just share about refugees, or you can share some of these stories of refugees making a difference in the world. Share them on Twitter or Facebook. And a lot of people would call things that are just social media based, they call it slacktivism, but I call it a first step. I call it, the beginning of something bigger. And so the next thing we would say is we'd say, oh, well, what you can do is you can donate. That's a step better. You can donate to these organizations who are doing amazing work on the ground. And it's great. You can do that from your couch. You can do it in your underwear. Like, it doesn't take anything. And then the final step we would say that we want kind of people to move through this process would be say, hey, the best thing you can do is you can use your time and talents and skills and passions to volunteer and make a difference. And we're not expecting you to hop on a plane to Syria or to Greece or to North Africa. We're asking you to volunteer in your own community, because there are refugees in every community across the country who are looking to learn how to get around on public transit, or who are looking for a translator when they go in to talk to a social worker, or maybe need help navigating particular bureaucracies, you can step in and do that thing. And it's cool because we hear people who are like, okay, like I just sat on my couch, I did the tweet thing, and then I felt something different. I felt kind of a desire to do the next step, and then the next step, and then all of a sudden I'm volunteering every week. And just a year ago, I felt like I couldn't do anything. And that's our ultimate goal, is for people to have this tool that allows them to celebrate the good in the world, but that would lead ultimately to them becoming the good in the world. And my hope is that, in a year, all the stories in the good newspaper are just stories of people who read about something else in a previous good newspaper. They took some action steps, and now they're doing something so remarkable that we want to print that and allow the cycle to continue.
Oh, wow,
and so it's so fun to get to have these outlets where we're reaching this beautiful community of people who share these values of desiring to see more good in the world and celebrating it when they see it, but also joining in and becoming it.
Yeah, it's so neat. It's such a cool concept. I really love it. And I remember seeing that. I remember seeing the how to support refugees, good, better, best. I think it's such a, because it's, otherwise it can be overwhelming, right? It's just like, you're giving people a kind of ladder, a step stool, toward, good, better, best. I think that's really neat. And I think makes sense from like a psychological perspective even.
Yeah. Thank you.
How is the good newspaper doing in terms of sale? I mean, do you sell it, or
Yeah, so we sell it. I mean, it's unfortunately selling it's the only way to pay for it.
Sure.
But over time, who knows? Maybe with the right corporate sponsors who are doing good in the world, if that's you, call me. Maybe with them sponsoring it, it can become more free and accessible to more people at a lower cost or for free. But it's amazing. It's wild. We've got literally thousands of subscribers across the United States, in all 50 states now. Actually, North Dakota was the biggest holdout. I don't know why, but North Dakota, somebody subscribed there, and then more people subscribed there. But anyway, all 50 states, and people subscribe and they get it delivered in the mail to their house. And it's so fun to see, to like open up Instagram and see the stories of people kind of sharing about that. But it's doing way better than I would have expected. Like I literally, when we posted it, I was like, we'll see if this works, but it would make sense for it not to, because newspapers are crashing and burning right now. But I think that people have this desire to not just like celebrate good in the world. There's plenty of ways to do that on the internet, but to be able to physically hold this tangible manifestation of something that is in line with their values. They care about a sense of community and empathy and good, and they want to own that. They want to hold it in their hands, and then when somebody else in their lives need it, they want to be able to give that to them as a gift as well. And so it's really cool how the cycle continues and people continue to care about this. And so we're going to keep on making it as long as people want it. And we have not run out of good news stories yet. And I am so excited to just keep on diving in and celebrating more people who are doing good in the world.
I love it. So how good is the company? Is it a not-for-profit or is it a business?
We are a business. I love nonprofits, but for us, it just felt like a good fit for it to be self-sustaining, for it to be a business that can run itself, because that gives us the most longevity. And then people's, donations can go towards the organizations that we're pointing people to. And so we've got lots of encouragement to support other organizations within the paper. At one point, I would love to become a B Corp, which essentially just shows that our values, that we put our money where our mouth is. That basically says it's this whole process you have to go through. So that's why we haven't done it yet. But it basically just says, hey, we are holding up to the standards of this being a for-profit company that's not just focused on profits. It's focused on our mission first and foremost. Right. And that's what we are right now. We just don't have the papers that describe it. But we had a podcast guest a while back, and she described her for-profit company. She said, I don't like using for-profit. I like describing it as a for-purpose company. And I like that a lot. And I think I'm really inspired by a lot of companies who have come before me that have done that, whether they're small businesses in my community, but I think kind of on a bigger scale, I think about Patagonia, who just changed their mission statement to be focused on protecting Mother Nature. Mm-hmm. And I love that. And now everything that they do is in line with that ethos. And they're not, even if they can make more money with a particular product, if it hurts the environment, they say no. And I love that they're guided by something deeper than their finances.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I ask because I mean, just from a business perspective, I've been working on a business idea myself, sort of extending out of Yumi Empathy, and been thinking about it a lot. And I was just curious as to how things work in your world. That's all. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I will say it's not like we're flooded with money.
Sure.
It's a difficult, tricky thing, and there have been months where I didn't know if we would make enough money to make it to the next month, and that's terrifying. But I also think that's the reality of any running any business, and when it's something you care so deeply about, I think it's especially hard because it's like, it's not just that this thing that I've been working on would fail, but it would be that people who found something that is helping motivate them to be their fullest, truest selves that make the biggest difference, like it's going to affect them as well. And so it's, I don't know, being an entrepreneur is like one of the best things too. And that energy of, figuring out what it takes to make it to that next level is terrifying and so exhilarating and thrilling.
Yeah.
And I'm still figuring out a lot of stuff, but I'm loving it.
Well, it's so neat that we can, as humans, take this core part of our passion and our philosophy and make it a thing that could potentially be a business and a thriving one. Like, that's such a exhilarating idea.
Yeah, I would say it's just so energizing. Yeah. The stuff, I mean, I feel like I'm just constantly, my momentum is fueled fully by how exciting and novel all of this is.
That's lovely. I love to hear that. I did get a question from a listener of the podcast, Christopher Swan. He asked, what are his future plans for Good?
That's a great question. If you had asked me a few years ago, I would have never told you that we'd be running a newspaper. And so I very much hold these things loosely. My big goal for the next year is to find ways to make what we do more accessible to more people. So not just people who have the privilege of being able to spend money like this on something that they care about, but what does it look like to meet people in places where they need good news, but wouldn't even think to look for it, or need good news, but couldn't afford it. And so I think that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at, and basically just figuring out, okay, how can we get the finances to do this, and then who are the right people to partner with. And we've got a few ideas, but we're staying very open-minded. And then the other thing is we're just working on something new for the podcast right now, and we're working on a way to dive deeper into some of the stories that we've been telling over the last few years, and some of the new stories we want to tell in a way that's different than how we've done our last few years. And for me, I feel like I always just need to be chasing something that fuels my curiosity. I need to be wondering. And the minute that I feel like I know something, then nothing feels as natural anymore. So I'm excited to be leaning into my curiosities more with all of these kind of new things and just trying to figure things out in worlds that I don't know anything in, and allowing that to be to manifest into something that's really unique and different from what we've always done.
Nice. That's cool. Well, let's start to wrap it up. We always wrap up the show, Branden, talking about our empathy heroes. These are people in our lives. They could be characters from books or movies. They could be a quote we love. You're seemingly flush with quotes. They could be just friends, partners, etc. I will name my empathy hero first this week to give you a moment to think on yours. My empathy hero this week is, I mentioned her at the top of the episode, Mary Angela Abeo, creator of Faces of Fortitude. Again, just doing a beautiful job in getting the stories of people who have been impacted by suicide out into the world. There's so many of us, and it's and she's doing it in a way that's it's a photography project. She's a photographer, and she takes these beautiful black and white photos. It's just a wonderful mental health awareness project, and I'm grateful to know Mary Angela and I met her through this sort of podcast and this experience. So if you guys haven't listened to Mary Angela's episode of this podcast, definitely go back and do that. Mary Angela is my empathy hero this week. How about you, Branden?
I love that. That's really good. Oh man. So, I mean, the first person that comes to my mind is my wife. She's amazing. She has taught me so much about empathy, and I have learned so much from her. And I genuinely believe that if I had started this newspaper before I met her, it would be so shallow. It wouldn't be filled with depth. It wouldn't be filled with, acknowledgement of heartbreak and pain and injustice, and I think it'd be a lot of rainbows and butterflies. And so she has ultimately made this deeper. But I do feel like saying my wife is a bit of a cop-out, and so I want to extend one more empathy hero to one of the people I admire most in the world. Her name is Sarah Corbett. Sarah Corbett is the founder of Craftivist Collective, and she is focused on the art of gentle protest. She has a wonderful book. She's been on our podcast before, and she has found a very unique way of, in a time where activism feels more important than ever, but it also feels very loud and very extrovert focused and very
combative.
Combative, which I think those really move the needle in a lot of contexts. But she focuses on a more gentle, quiet form of activism. And it's so interesting the way that she is able to take on big corporations or political leaders she's got all kinds of creative ways, but sometimes she'll essentially make crafts for people that remind them of the values that they hold deep inside that have maybe been buried by money or power or circumstance, whatever
remarkable.
It is. And she'll pass them along to people, and in the encouragement of making a better decision on the next time around. And it's inspired me so much. And so she is absolutely another one of my empathy heroes.
Lovely. And what was her name again?
Sarah Corbett.
Sarah Corbett. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
And naming your wife as an empathy hero is certainly not a cop-out.
It's so exponentially true every single day that it's like, well, maybe I need to share like somebody who I just was reminded of this week.
No, I hear you. It's like one of those empathy heroes.
Exactly.
Well, Branden, where can people connect with you and subscribe to the Good Newspaper and the Sounds Good podcast and all that stuff?
Thanks for asking. You can find me across the internet at Branden Harvey. My name is spelled with an E-N, which is a little tricky, but it's great because my name is the same everywhere. And then you can find Good across the internet at goodgoodgoodco on Instagram and Twitter. And then our website is also goodgoodgood.co. And that's got our podcast. We've got more than 150 conversations with people who are making a difference in the world. And then we've got our print newspaper and then our free weekly email newsletter filled with good news. So whatever your favorite platform is, we probably have some good news for you there. And we'd love to meet you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And thank you so much for being on You Me Empathy, Branden.
Thank you. And thanks for asking such great questions. I loved getting to dive into all of this.
Of course. And to you listeners, I'm here, you're here, we're here together on this wayward, overwhelming, awe-inspiring pale blue dot. We have each other. It's You Me Empathy.